9.
The superpower meeting off Malta becomes the summit in a storm. This is the CBS Evening News. Bob Schieffer reporting. Good evening. With monumental change underway all across Europe, with the Iron Curtain crumbling, it was the superpower summit that had everything going for it. Everything, that is, but the weather. High winds and rain howled across the southern Mediterranean today, reminding both sides that no matter how super the powers, there's still no equal to Mother Nature on a rampage. Dan Rather's heading up our coverage, and we go now to him.
Well, Bob, there's some here who believe the storm is easing a little bit at the moment, and so hopes are on the rise for resuming the summit at sea tomorrow. George Bush and Mikhail Gorbachev did meet for 5 hours today, meetings described as, quote, very productive. The president, we know, made proposals to move U.S.-Soviet relations ahead on trade and economic cooperation, and he suggested holding the 1990 summit in the United States sometime in the last 2 weeks of June. But then, today's summit was swamped by the sea.
It was one of those days when nature unexpectedly throws history off course. Day broke with a vicious storm hitting Malta, pounding the two warships 400 yards apart in the bay. Both were dragging their anchors across the bottom. The U.S. Navy cruiser Belknap cut its stern anchor and steamed into the wind to hold position. The Soviets called in 2 tugboats to secure their warship at bow and stern. The heavy seas forced cancellation of plans to hold the first meeting on Gorbachev's cruiser. The meeting was moved instead to his well-planned headquarters in the harbor, the securely docked luxury liner Gorky. The two leaders met on the luxury liner with small talk and jokes about the weather. Gorbachev said it fit right in with his proposals to disarm the Mediterranean.
The first thing to do is to eliminate those types of ships which you cannot board in this kind of weather.
After lunch, President Bush headed back to the U.S. Navy cruiser Belknap for a rest. And nearly didn't make it. His heavily loaded launch was almost swamped. They circled around and tried again. In order to secure the boat to the side of the ship, a crewman had to grab a line with a grappling hook and hang on. The pitching of the sea made it impossible again. After 4 tries, they finally lashed up. The president and his aides scrambled aboard, but the rest of the day's schedule was scuttled. With the wind up to 50 miles an hour and no let-up in sight, Navy officers told the president it would be dangerous to try to get him back on the launch. At 7 o'clock this evening Malta time, they called off plans for dinner and more meetings. The U.S. Navy weather forecast is for winds to die down somewhat overnight, to be only half as stiff tomorrow. But Mikhail Gorbachev might be in for a rough ride out to the Belknap, the scheduled site for tomorrow's summit at sea.
Joining me now is our chief White House correspondent, Leslie Stahl. Leslie, so far nothing in Malta has gone according to the forecast, raising all sorts of questions about site selection, staff work, and planning. And then there was the fact that until maybe 48 hours before the summit started, President Bush was saying, listen, I want this to be a conversation, feet up, no agenda. Hasn't worked out that way.
No, forget the feet up. This was an extremely structured conversation today. President Bush came here with specific plans. He proposed a list of very detailed proposals and initiatives, everything from speeding up arms control to specific ways to help Gorbachev with trade.
Feeling pretty good. Had a good night's sleep.
Good morning. Nice to see you.
Before the storm shut down the summit, the two leaders met on the anchored Russian cruise ship Maxim Gorky, where President Bush tried to set the summit agenda. He made 21 specific proposals. Here are some of them. On arms control, accelerating the talks on cutting strategic weapons, instructing Secretary of State Baker and Soviet Foreign Minister Shevardnadze to meet next month in Moscow to resolve the outstanding issues so the treaty can be signed, if possible, at the next summit meeting, which Mr. Bush suggested be held in the U.S. at the end of June. A joint U.S.-Soviet agreement to support a huge conference of all the NATO and Warsaw Pact countries to sign a conventional arms treaty in Vienna in 1990. An agreement to destroy U.S. and Soviet chemical weapons to 20% of their present stocks to be signed during the 1990 summit. On trade, Mr. Bush gave Gorbachev several presents to bring home to Moscow. He called for the immediate beginning of negotiations toward a bilateral trade agreement and the lifting of trade restrictions on Soviet goods. The beginning of a process that would grant protection for American businesses that invest in the Soviet Union. And something Gorbachev has been asking for, U.S. approval of Soviet observer status at the international trade talks. Mr. Bush did complain to Gorbachev about Soviet behavior in Central America. That should sit well with conservatives back home who will surely be unhappy that the president is going forward with trade negotiations before all the human rights issues in the Soviet Union have been resolved. Now, Dan, we still don't know what the two sides discussed on the rapid changes in Eastern Europe, but Mr. Bush did endorse the idea of holding the Olympics in the year 2004 in Berlin, in East Berlin and West Berlin. The storm is still raging here.
It's picking up again. Thanks, Leslie. Well, the White House described Mr. Bush's points as a bold framework for improving U.S.-Soviet relations. They didn't necessarily match Mr. Gorbachev's own framework. Our Moscow correspondent Barry Peterson looks at that.
This may well be the item on Mikhail Gorbachev's list he most wants to talk about. The dramatic events ripping across Eastern Europe and how to control them.
President Gorbachev needs to know from President Bush that the United States will not attempt to, so to speak, pick up the loose change in Eastern Europe.
And for the Soviets, there was another item high on the list they brought to the summit, to make Gorbachev look like a winner. That could buy him credibility back home, where tough economic times are turning even some of his own supporters against him. So the Soviets described the talks as going very well. Cheery, said one, a mood that seemed to characterize as well all the Soviet president's men.
The mood was, I would say, buoyant and almost an attempt to hold that back.
What does that mean?
I don't know. It means that perhaps things are going so well that they're afraid to say that they're that good.
If it was all good cheer this morning and nothing but good cheer, that means they haven't begun to discuss thoroughly the really gritty, profoundly complex problems.
And the Soviet public relations men even found a silver lining in Malta's stormy gray clouds. It wasn't our idea to have this summit at sea, said one. So if things keep going wrong, don't blame us. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Malta.
Malta has storms, of course, from time to time, but local residents say that this one today is the worst in a decade. Dan, do you suppose that if this weather turns worse, that they may have to actually call this thing off? Is that possible?
Well, if the weather turns worse, they might have to do that. The forecast is the weather will be better. Make no mistake, Bob, this is a vicious storm. This would drive Sinbad the Sailor or Lord Nelson to cover. But the expectation is, and I think it's a reasonable one, that it will subside at least by tomorrow to get President Bush off the cruiser Belknap and that talks can resume.
I suppose that the problem would be getting the president off that boat. Even if the weather were too bad to hold the summit on the boat, there's the problem of getting him from the boat back to shore where they could talk. But coming as you have from Eastern Europe and being there all week, what effect will what's been happening in Europe this past week have on this summit? And do you see that as having a major impact there?
Well, certainly, it's changed the whole dynamic of this summit, Bob. For one thing, when President Bush came in today with that agenda, it made it pretty clear that he wants to talk in a broad, general way about where things go from here, and if possible, a new era of cooperation between the superpowers as opposed to confrontation. There seems to be a realization on both sides that there's going to be a backlash in Eastern Europe, perhaps inside the Soviet Union itself, with the realization that democracy as the United States knows it, and a free enterprise marketplace economy as we have it, isn't necessarily going to be, and in some cases certainly won't be, what individual countries in Eastern Europe settle on, or for that matter, what the Soviets themselves are able to work out.
All right, Dan, well, we look forward to hearing reports from you later tonight on Saturday night with Connie Chung, and then again tomorrow when the summit concludes, if indeed they're able to have it. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
And one other note, a CBS News New York Times poll, which was released as the two leaders met today, suggested that American public opinion about the Soviet Union is changing as dramatically and almost as rapidly as the weather on Malta. As recently as May of this year, half the people we surveyed in this country believed the Soviets were trying to dominate the world. But the random nationwide telephone sample of 1,297 Americans taken this week showed only 34% still hold that view. Still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, more from the Philippines, where the coup attempt against President Aquino has suddenly flared up again. And we'll have more about the uninvited gusts that held the superpowers at bay.
Put a luggage cart in a suitcase and what do you get? Samsonite's piggyback. It's particularly handy on long trips like the one from your car to the ticket counter.
Experience is a wonderful teacher. You develop more wisdom as you mature. You learn how to handle day-to-day problems better, even how to handle the aches and pains of a busy life. The times when the old back or the old hip says, That's when Bufferin is such a relief for me. Bufferin, my brand of aspirin, relieves those aches and pains fast. It helps me to keep doing the things I want to do.
Bufferin, so you can do the things you want to do.
I eat nutritious meals with plenty of fruit and vegetables, so how come I'm the one with painful gas?
Surprise! Foods high in nutrition are often high in gas. But Gas X gets rid of the gas, so you feel better fast. Eat right and feel right with Gas X.
Accidents happen. We can't stop them all, but we can have fewer, less serious ones, which would help lower car insurance costs. To do that, Allstate has combated drunk drivers and championed seatbelts, airbags, and anti-lock brakes. Allstate's committed to building a car insurance system everyone can live with.
The coup attempt in the Philippines is continuing and may even be gaining momentum. Rebel soldiers blasted military headquarters in Manila with artillery fire Sunday morning Manila time, and a large fire is now reported burning inside the base. We have a report from Gabby Tabunar.
Although rebel soldiers abandoned positions they occupied the day before, the attempt to overthrow the government of President Corazon Aquino is far from over. The rebels, mostly Marines, regrouped near the general headquarters of the armed forces, where they were subjected to intense aerial attack. The mutineers also took positions near a middle-class residential area. Sporadic fighting occurred throughout the day as fighter planes and helicopter gunships joined the confused battle. At one point, jet fighters strafed what they thought was a rebel convoy, but the targets turned out to be a government military column. The deadly firefight caught civilians in the crossfire. Late in the day, rebels occupied several buildings in the country's premier financial and business center, known as Makati. President Aquino went on nationwide television again to say she would show no mercy to the rebels.
We shall not entertain any offer to negotiate from those who have so shamelessly betrayed the solemn oath of a soldier to defend the Constitution. We leave them with two choices, to surrender or die.
People are generally calm as the coup enters the third day. But as the fighting continues, the coup attempt continues to undermine the image of stability and progress that Mrs. Aquino has tried to build up. Gabby Tabunar, CBS News, Manila.
In New Delhi, VP Singh was sworn in today as India's new prime minister. He led the five-party coalition that trounced Rajiv Gandhi in the recent parliamentary elections. He'll preside over India's first minority government since independence.
Which fruit has the most fiber per serving? This one, the prune. Prunes, the high fiber fruit.
That'll be a charge. We interrupt this purchase for a reminder. The Discover card actually pays you cash back for every charge.
That's a great idea.
Don't forget,
It pays to discover.
You know, you read this and you think, this is the Surgeon General. I should listen to this stuff. But all this low-fat fiber.
What are they really telling you? It's like they tell you how, but who's going to tell you what?
One way to start your diet is new Kellogg's Heartwise. More soluble fiber than oat bran, and a taste you'll actually enjoy. Heartwise.
You know, I know a bowl of cereal isn't all there is to it, but at least it's something I can put my hands on. Somewhere to start.
Take a word to the wise.
You want a deal? Well, here comes the deal.
Here's a hot deal.
This deal is real.
How hot?
This deal is hot.
It's on Oldsmobiles.
This deal is not just another deal.
It's Oldsmobiles' new generation celebration. Oldsmobiles made it possible for its dealers to pass along millions of dollars to its customers. Hurry, the deal ends January 3rd.
This is a deal on a new generation. Oldsmobile.
The Czechoslovak army today began disarming the Communist Party's paramilitary force, a key demand of the opposition. And in East Germany, the youngest member of the ruling Politburo quit today as party chief Egon Krenz found his hold on power slipping. Alan Pizzi reports.
Thousands of East German communists tonight booed their leader Egon Krenz and demanded that the entire ruling Politburo and Central Committee resign. Krenz promised to expel any party member who had abused power. East Germans have been rocked by new evidence of top-level corruption, including a lavish hunting lodge that was the private preserve of ousted Communist Party chief Erich Honecker. Honecker and others are being charged with a breach of public trust to the detriment of socialist property.
Ich bin überwältigend.
It's overwhelming, this woman said. They deceived us so much. We always had only bad places for vacations, and they lived here in great luxury. A security system like the one along the Berlin Wall and plenty of guards kept the public well away from the lakeside complex of lodges. It's still technically sealed. The state prosecutor has closed this area as evidence, the policeman on guard said. When investigations are over, it will surely be opened. That people ignored such restrictions is evidence of how much East Germany has changed. The owner of this lodge, ex-Prime Minister Willi Stoff, is also under investigation. A man who came to gaze at it said he was outraged. I was a Communist Party member for 22 years, he said, and I believed. Asked how he felt now, the man replied, I am so upset, I don't even want to talk about it. Amazingly, no one is yet calling for revenge. People here say Erich Honecker's punishment for his lavish lifestyle should be simple. He should be forced to live as an ordinary citizen under the socialist system he once used to his own advantage. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, near Waren, East Germany.
Andrei Sakharov and 4 other members of the Soviet parliament called today for a 2-hour nationwide strike next weekend to force an end to the communist monopoly on power. That, as many Soviet consumers are hoping for an end to chronic shortages that make daily life an impossible challenge. Peter Van Zandt has that story.
Working in one of the harshest environments in the Soviet Union, the Vorkuta coal miners recently staged a series of strikes. One of their demands, more soap. In Moscow, standing in line with hundreds of shivering Soviets, Mikhail Vasilyev shares the same desire as his Vorkuta comrades. 80% of our products are difficult to find. Today there's soap, tomorrow there isn't. That's how it is.
The consumer market is falling apart because some very simple basic things are disappearing.
Like what?
Like soap.
The Soviet economy is having trouble keeping its citizens clean. The problem? Mikhail Gorbachev is dismantling the old system, where production of soap and everything else was ordered and controlled by the state.
The Soviet Union is trying to set up a market economy from scratch. They don't know how the system works. The level of ignorance about how market mechanisms operate is very, very high.
When Gorbachev ordered the soap factories off of central planning, most turned to making small quantities of unwanted luxury soap. Gorbachev's chief economic planner, Leonid Abalkin, is facing hundreds of similar supply problems as he tries to reshape the economy. He knows things will get worse before they get better. The situation is getting worse every month. We have to stop that trend. One mountain Abalkin must move is the resistance to change among Soviet workers. who have learned they don't have to work hard to make a living.
The labor in factories devised a way of slowing down the work process and slowing down innovation to suit themselves. And it's been very, very difficult for management really to manage in the true sense of the word.
Meanwhile, back in line, Mikhail Vasilyev has learned it may be 2 hours before he gets into this department store, where there may be nothing worth buying, not even a bar of soap. Another year or two of this, and it will be chaos. Another year or two. That's how much time some Soviet watchers believe Mikhail Gorbachev has to improve the economy. Or he too may end up in line, the unemployment line. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, Moscow.
The reforms underway in the Soviet bloc in what is now considered the reduced threat of a superpower war will probably result in deep cuts in U.S. military spending. CBS News correspondent David Martin looks tonight at the impact that this could have on Americans who work in the defense industry.
If you live in a place like Seattle, the prospect of deep cuts in defense spending may not conjure up thoughts of a peace dividend so much as memories of the bad old days after Vietnam. The defense budget was being slashed, and Seattle, so heavily dependent on the fortunes of Boeing, became a nightmare of unemployment lines and bad jokes about the last person to leave making sure to turn out the lights.
So what happens if, as now seems possible, the defense budget is cut by $180 billion over the next 5 years? The post-Vietnam era is not an encouraging precedent, but there are some good reasons why history does not have to repeat itself.
What makes a change like this more manageable today than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago is the GNP is larger, local economies affected by such changes are significantly more diversified.
There will almost certainly be some short-term unemployment as production lines close or slow down.
1 in every 3 scientists and engineers are employed by defense, and 1 in every 5 factory workers, manufacturing workers, are employed by defense.
But defense industry workers are highly skilled and should be able to find other jobs, provided the rest of the economy remains strong.
They can shift from military to commercial. A lot of the workers can. A lot of the electronics people, and that's about 1/3 of the engineers, can shift over into the commercial world.
When the Pentagon tried to shut down the F-14 production line, Grumman warned that 3,500 people on Long Island would lose their jobs. The F-14 survived, just barely, but Grumman and the rest of Long Island have been given fair warning.
We now have a little bit of breathing time, but we caution all of Long Island public leaders and business leaders that, we shouldn't squander that time away.
There is enough warning in the case of defense budget cuts that we know who won't be making what. And therefore, there's an opportunity to plan for that.
In Seattle, they won't even have to do much planning. Boeing already has a $75 billion backlog in orders for new commercial airliners. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Mr. Kayam, I hate shaving.
Doug, try this Remington microscreen. It shaves as close as a blade or your money back. No other shaver makes that promise.
Smooth. Now I know why you bought the company.
The Remington microscreen.
It's easy to get lost in a storm. You may have been lost in this one. Your medical records, your bank statements. Vital information gone in a flash because it wasn't protected. So 3M invented data cartridge technology, a unique data backup system that protects your information. Because for someone to help you, they have to be able to find you. 3M, innovation working for you.
Good friends and good food, but my stomach aches. My party and Mylanta 2.
Double strength Mylanta 2 with nearly double the acid neutralizing power of any leading regular strength brand.
Because my life takes Mylanta 2.
Yeah, I sure can. We have just about hourly flights there.
6th of October, United flight number 725.
Sure, I'd be happy. I'll help you with that. And your flight number?
Arriving in Tokyo at 5:10 p.m.
Both animals are also confirmed.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling.
Business class.
Yeah, but I think you're
in a world fraught with phone frustration, people who fly come to learn of a singular exception, where wishes are granted with efficiency and grace.
Delafria Stokowitsky? Is that with an I or a Y?
United Airlines. Come fly the friendly skies.
Finally tonight, President Bush promised no surprises at the Malta summit. Of course, he had no way of knowing about the storm. That's sort of the way it is with surprises, and that's certainly the way it is with the weather on Malta. Richard Roth reports.
One man from Malta today said it was weather like this that shipwrecked St. Paul on the island's rocky coast, and that started Christianity here. Everyone had something to say about the weather, and what they couldn't do about it, they did around it. The Zaytun Band Club played for peace during a short break in the storm. They could have played for a longer break, but the way the Maltese explain their weather, ever since St. Paul's time, the thinking's been if it's bad, that's good.
It works on the contrary. If there is bad weather, that means something fine is in the air.
I confirm someone else said that usually this cold weather and this rain, we associate it with good luck, you see.
It sure didn't look that way this morning at the home of Josette and Pierre Sherry, where Raisa Gorbachev was scheduled to visit to see how people live here.
Because of the weather today, she's cancelled everything. But still there's a slight chance that she will try to come.
You had to be an optimist to even imagine a silver lining in these clouds, or perhaps you simply had to be Maltese. When Mrs. Gorbachev missed an appointment at Valletta's Cathedral, most people didn't complain, they just went home for lunch. Only the weatherman was blaming it on the Russians.
Well, the storm has been caused by cold wind coming down from Siberia.
And for him, that was nothing personal. Call that the luck of the Maltese. For no sooner was the lunchtime ending than Raisa was on the move, dropping by to see the Sherrys with apologies a few hours late, then keeping her date at the local cathedral. Another thing about the weather, according to people here, it's easy enough to find shelter as long as you're not stuck out at sea. Richard Roth, CBS News, Malta.
That's the news. Summit coverage from Malta continues on Saturday night with Connie Chung, tonight at 10, 9 Central Time, and again on an expanded edition of Sunday Morning with Charles Kuralt, beginning tomorrow at 7 a.m., 6 Central. I'm Bob Schieffer, CBS News in New York. Good night.
To my beautiful wife.
It's nice to know he still loves the way you look. And if you wear dentures, you can count on Effordent to freshen up dentures and clean away stains so well. With Effordent, all he'll notice is you.
With most rechargeable lights, you need an extra hand to shine them where you want. So First Alert created Ready Light, the rechargeable light with a swivel head. Ready Light from First Alert, always ready to lend a hand.
Every morning, they go to work. Over 10 million phone cards from U.S. Sprint. The only card that gives you 100% fiber optic sound quality and rates that are still up to 25% lower than AT&T. To get yours free without changing phone companies, call Sprint now. The phone card. In a world that works 24 hours a day, it's the hardest working card in the world.
That shredded wheat sure is nutritious. How's it taste?
Exactly how it looks, actually.
Then try Kellogg's Raisin Squares. Not just shredded wheat, but shredded wheat with real raisin in the middle.
Oh, that'll change the taste, won't it?
Yep, you can do that. Raisin Squares make shredded wheat lusciously delicious.
I definitely detect taste.
Kellogg's Raisin Squares. Shredded wheat with taste in every bite.
Taste. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
This is CBS. If you